Yo, what's good, y'all? My name is Lightfoot, and today we're going to be talking about how to take a camera and turn it into a synth. That sounds a little bit something like this. So for those who don't know me, I do this series called This or That, where I poll my Instagram friends and family and I give them two objects to pick from. And the winning object, I then have to make an entire beat out of it. And I mean like an entire beat using only sounds from the object. The most recent one that I did was this Nikon camera. And I've been getting requests and comments and questions for each episode, but this one definitely had the most. I can't always fit it in the Instagram video because Instagram, the format's obviously short, and the videos that I post on YouTube, I want to keep more musical than informative, but I figured now's a perfect chance to do a full video on just the process, how I go about doing it, and let you know that this isn't wizardry, this isn't that complicated, everybody can do it. All you need is just an understanding about how to approach these things. I think you'll find that you'll be able to start building synths out of damn near any object that you come across. So cheers, let's get into it. In the case of this Nikon, we have all sorts of different sounds that we can utilize. We got kind of the discharge of the lens, the sound of it clicking back into place, this shutter and click. Even these little dangly metal pieces here can work. Just simply knocking it. This film reel. Really, the list goes on and on. You know, sometimes you won't get lucky with an item like this. There won't be as many sounds to choose from. In the case of this, we had a lot to work with. So the next thing that I try to think about is, am I gonna have to make a synth out of a transient, or is there gonna be some type of longer tone that I can pull from it? When I was first approaching this camera, I thought about, oh word, I'm gonna use this reel thing, and that's gonna be the tone that I use for my synthesizer. What I found was that it was a little too harsh, didn't quite work the way I wanted it to, and I spent a lot of time processing it, and then I ended up just bagging it. What I did end up using is the click of this lens back into the body of the camera, and left me with this metallic kind of cool transient that I was then able to time stretch out a bit and fine tune and grab a tone and pitch for, and then ultimately make a synth. So after I figure out the different sounds that I have available to me on the object, it's then time to record it all in. And something that I've been finding is that it's better to leave less recording time than it is to leave a lot. So in other words, don't run through like an hour of recording your object in a million different ways. I mean, you can do that if you want and you have the time, but it leaves you with a lot of sounds to choose from. And this becomes cumbersome when you're trying to kind of keep things moving, and especially when you don't know how successful you're going to be with building the first synth. When you're doing these at the beginning, you can run into a lot of duds and end up not liking the sound at all and just having to scrap it all together. And that can be super discouraging, but if you leave less recording time to go through, you have that much less that you have to pick and choose from, giving you a quicker process to start sound designing. So I have some foley that I recorded in here. So let's just kind of quickly go through it, see what we got. Now I already did this earlier, so I know kind of what I want to look for, but a lot of different transients with clicks and pops, that kind of nice metallic shutter sound. Like I said, I didn't really record much. I wanted to keep amount of sounds that I was choosing from to a minimum so that I could kind of move quickly and not get paralyzed by too many choices. So let's try building off of this transient right here. See if we can get something from it. So the first part of the process for me is isolating the transient and bringing it down to its own audio track. So I'll do some cutting, trim it all up, solo it. Sounds pretty all right. I'll then add a little bit of a warp marker. Put one at the beginning, one at the end, and just stretch it out just a bit. So now we have it's slightly longer of a transient, which is gonna help us pull a tone from it a little bit easier. Cool, so now we have a sample that we wanna use, time stretched out a bit. So let's open up a simpler. So in my case, I'm gonna actually have to open up a simpler. I'm gonna convert that into a sampler because that's my default on my MIDI track when I open them. But you can just skip that and go right to opening up a sampler. Because I have a simpler open, I'm going to convert that into a sampler by right-clicking and then going all the way down to the bottom and hitting sampler. And then I want to right-click and just crop the sample so that I'm not dealing with all that extra stuff. And now I can I want to click snap to grid off so that I can move these start and end points around freely and not really be constricted by zero crossing sections. What my focus is this large part of the transient. This is where the tone is going to really reside. So right now we have our foley mapped across every key on our keyboard. A nice little clicky transient. Our mission is to be able to figure out the tone of this sample so that when I hit down C, it's actually in fact a C. So the first step could be to open up a tuner and throw that on. And so let's try playing and seeing what C sounds like when I hit C on the keyboard. And notice how the tuner isn't picking up. It's because there's not enough tonal information for it to register anything. So we have to kind of force feed it by messing with the sustain mode. And if you look down in this section, there's 3 different options. You have on, loop, and then loop back and forth. And loop back and forth is the one that I prefer to use, but you could honestly use whatever sounds right. I've had success with loop, and I've had success with loop back and forth equally, but loop back and forth I know works well for this song, for this sound, so I'm just gonna use it. And so now we have our loop back and forth, and it's kind of this nasty sound. So let's move our loop start so that it's not starting at the beginning and starting around there, and see how far we can close the loop end, put up the crossfade. Cool, so now we have a tone and our tuner is actually reading something, but the problem now is when I hit down C, it's registering it at A, so we have to drop the root key down a few semitones. I went one too far. Cool. So now when I hit D, it's D. When I hit C, it's C. When I hit G, it's G. A little bit sharp. So you can just mess with the detune a bit as needed. And so that's the tone. You can do a lot with that. That all came from just that transient. And with a few little tweaks, you can actually make this become a pretty cool synth. So let's add some reverb. I was gonna use third-party plugins, but let me just stick with Ableton Stock so that if you have Ableton, you can just pretty much make this sound. And I'll include the foley that I recorded in a download link in the description here, so you can download these and basically plug and play and do exactly what I'm doing here. But I encourage you to just try it on your own, because I guarantee you can find sounds that will render pretty dope results too. So a little bit of reverb. We'll pull up some OTT, because who doesn't love OTT? And we can actually even go over here and go to our filter section and bring down our cutoff range. Sounds pretty cool. And if we wanted to go one further, we could even maybe have our LFO modulate our and the other thing that we can do is to add more variation is come up with an arpeggiator and the rate up pretty high, roll up the steps so it goes up a few octaves. Maybe adjust a little bit of the EQ so it's not and if you wanted things even tighter, all you have to do is go to your ADSR area, which is right here, your volume section, and you could drop your sustain down, maybe bump up the decay a hair. Turn off the arpeggiator. You sort of have this shorter attack now. So yeah, that's just synth design with literally a piece of foley from a camera, which is pretty cool. And things can get crazy when you start talking about containers with the ability to hold liquid. Then you have control of the pitch, and especially with, objects that have, maybe a sustained tone that you can maybe create from, I don't know, like a glass or like a bottle or something like that. So like really it's up to your imagination and kind of what you want to try to explore. There is not a single object. I will honestly say, I don't think there's a single object that exists that you can't make a synth sound from, especially with things like Ableton, where you can warp and lengthen out transients and lengthen out tones. So yeah, I encourage you guys to try. I will attach this patch and maybe this little basic rack into a download link in the description. But yeah. There it is. Sound design with a goddamn camera. Peace.